There's something powerful about a name, especially when it holds a message from God. Take Daniel, for instance. His name wasn't chosen at random. In Hebrew, it's 3 syllables with 3 deep meanings. Dan means judge. The middle E means my, and L stands for God. Put them together, and what do you get? God is my judge. That wasn't just a title, it was a prophecy over his life. And Daniel lived up to that name in every way possible. He didn't walk around trying to impress kings or gain approval from people. His life declared, I answer to God, not to man. Not Nebuchadnezzar, not Belshazzar, not Darius. God alone. Everything Daniel did reflected that conviction. How he ate, how he interpreted dreams, how he prayed, how he led. Everything was centered on God. His vision of the world, his decisions, his loyalty, they were all rooted in one truth. God is my ultimate authority. Now, let's dive into what set Daniel apart. Darius, the king of the Medo-Persian Empire, had a vast kingdom. To manage it, he appointed 120 satraps, regional governors. But over them, he placed 3 administrators. One of them was Daniel. Daniel wasn't young at this point. He was likely in his 80s. But age didn't slow him down. In fact, he stood out even more. He distinguished himself above the rest with his exceptional spirit and character. He was so capable and trustworthy that Darius began planning to put him in charge of the entire empire. And of course, that kind of promotion stirred jealousy. The other administrators and satraps couldn't stand the idea of Daniel rising above them, so they schemed. They tried to find a reason to accuse him anything they could use to destroy his reputation. But there was nothing. No corruption, no negligence, no flaw in his leadership. Finally, they admitted defeat, but not in the way you'd expect. They said, "We will never find any basis to charge Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God." So they came up with a plan. If Daniel wouldn't break the king's rules, maybe they could make a law that clashed with his faith. They approached the king with flattery, pretending to speak for all the officials. "May King Darius live forever," they said. "All your royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have agreed. You should issue a law that for the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or man except you, O king, shall be thrown into the lion's den." It was a trap. But Darius, caught up in their words and unaware of their true motives, agreed. He signed the law. And according to the tradition of the Medes and Persians, once a law was signed, it couldn't be changed. Now, how did Daniel respond? He didn't protest. He didn't go into hiding. He didn't try to cut a deal. When Daniel learned that the decree had been signed, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had always done. That's important. Just as he had always done. This wasn't some grand protest or dramatic rebellion. This was simply Daniel being Daniel. He didn't start praying because of the law. He had always been praying morning, noon, and night. He didn't stop because of the threat either. Because again, God was his judge. Daniel had lived this way since he was a young man, ever since he was taken from Jerusalem to Babylon. Back then, when Nebuchadnezzar captured Jerusalem, Daniel and a few other promising young men were selected to be trained for royal service. They were to be educated, clothed, and fed the finest food and wine from the king's table. But Daniel saw the food differently. He didn't just see meat and wine, he saw a spiritual test, a moment of decision. For him, even his diet was a matter of obedience. The Bible says, Daniel resolved in his heart not to defile himself with the portion of the king's meat or the wine he drank. So he respectfully asked the chief of the eunuchs for permission to abstain. The official was hesitant. "If you look worse than the other young men, the king will have my head," he said. Daniel didn't argue. He offered a test. "Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us only vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with the others and decide accordingly." The official agreed. At the end of 10 days, Daniel and his friends looked healthier and better nourished than everyone else. So their diet was changed, and God honored their decision. The Bible says, "To these 4 young men God gave knowledge and understanding in all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds." This set the foundation for what came next. Daniel's ability to interpret dreams wasn't just a skill, it was a gift from God. And it became the way God used him to influence empires. When King Nebuchadnezzar had disturbing dreams that none of his wise men could explain, Daniel stepped in. But before revealing the meaning, he gave credit where credit was due. "There is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries," Daniel said. "He has shown the king what will happen in days to come." He never claimed the glory for himself. He knew it was all from God. Later, during the reign of King Belshazzar, Daniel was called again, this time to interpret the mysterious handwriting on the wall during a wild feast. Belshazzar had blasphemed by drinking from the sacred vessels of the temple, and Daniel didn't hold back. He rebuked the king with bold words. "You have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You brought the goblets from his temple and drank from them with your nobles and concubines. You praised gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone gods who cannot see or hear or understand. But you did not honor the God who holds your life and all your ways in his hand." Daniel's interpretations always pointed back to God. He didn't flatter kings. He didn't fear consequences. He spoke the truth even when it could cost him everything. Time and again, Daniel's clarity and courage stood in stark contrast to the shifting powers around him. Kingdoms came and went, Babylon, Persia, but Daniel remained. Why? Because his life wasn't built on empires, it was built on God. And it wasn't just what he said or what he ate, it was how he prayed. Daniel's prayer life is perhaps the most striking example of his devotion. He prayed because he believed that what God thought and did mattered more than anything else, more than politics, more than popularity, more than safety. Prayer wasn't a side ritual for him, it was central. A way of life. A daily appointment with the Most High. A conversation that shaped every decision, every response. Keep in mind, Daniel wasn't a monk hidden in a monastery. He was a senior official, deeply involved in the government of a world empire. He managed people. He signed documents. He advised kings. He had meetings, responsibilities, pressure. And yet, 3 times a day, without fail, he stopped everything to talk to God. Some people assume that prayer is only for religious professionals or people with extra time. But Daniel proves that the busier you are, the more you need to pray. When Darius made prayer illegal, Daniel didn't adjust his routine. He didn't scale back or skip a day. He didn't use vague words that could be interpreted multiple ways. The Bible says he gave thanks before his God, not Darius, not idols, not the gods of Persia, his God. And he did it just as he had done before. Daniel's commitment to prayer wasn't just known to God, it was known to everyone. And that's what made it dangerous. When the law was signed, his enemies knew exactly where to find him. The upstairs room, the open windows, facing Jerusalem, morning, noon, and night. And so they came together. They caught him praying, asking God for help, just as he had always done. They ran straight to the king. "Didn't you sign a decree, O king?" they asked, "saying that anyone who prays to any god or man except you shall be thrown into the lion's den?" And the king confirmed it. "The decree stands, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed." Then came the dagger. Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you or the law you signed. He still prays 3 times a day. In that moment, Darius realized he had been trapped. The law had been a weapon, and Daniel was the target. The Bible says the king was greatly distressed. He spent the whole day trying to find a way to rescue Daniel. But the law was unbreakable. He couldn't undo what had been sealed. So at sunset, with a heavy heart, Darius gave the order. Daniel was brought in and lowered into the lion's den. Before the stone was rolled into place, the king spoke words filled with both sorrow and hope. "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was laid over the mouth of the den. The king sealed it with his own signet ring and those of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation could not be changed. Then Darius returned to his palace, but he couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep, he refused entertainment. His mind was consumed with worry. The man he trusted the most, the man he had planned to elevate, was now locked in a den with lions. At the break of dawn, Darius rushed back. As he neared the den, his voice trembled. "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" Silence. Then a voice. "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him, nor have I done any wrong before you, O king." Daniel was alive, unharmed, saved. The king was overjoyed. He ordered that Daniel be lifted out of the den, and when they pulled him up, not a single wound was found on him because he had trusted in his God. But that wasn't the end of the story. Darius turned his wrath toward the very men who had plotted Daniel's downfall. He ordered them and their families thrown into the same lion's den, and this time, there was no angel to shut the lions' mouths. Justice was swift, brutal, complete. And once the dust settled, Darius issued a new decree, one that echoed across the empire. "I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." Imagine that. A pagan king publicly proclaiming the power of the Most High God, all because of one man's unshakable devotion. Daniel's life was defined not by comfort, but by conviction. He didn't chase influence, he chased obedience. And because of that, he ended up with both. He didn't compromise to climb the ladder. He climbed because he refused to compromise. And now, centuries later, his story still speaks. So what does this mean for us? What can we learn from a man who faced down lions, kings, and empires and stayed faithful? Let's close with 4 powerful applications from Daniel's life that can transform our own. First, prayer can be a form of public testimony, but only when it's done with the right heart. Jesus once said, "When you pray, don't be like the hypocrites. They love to stand in synagogues and on street corners to be seen by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen." Was Jesus condemning public prayer? He was condemning showy prayer. Prayer that seeks applause instead of intimacy with God. Daniel's prayer wasn't for attention. It was simply what he had always done. He didn't suddenly go to the window to make a point. That's just where he prayed, and everyone knew it. So when the law came, Daniel didn't change his behavior. He let his light shine not to boast, but to honor God. If your motives are pure, your public prayer can point others to the glory of God. Second, discipline breeds power. Daniel didn't suddenly become spiritual when the crisis hit. His strength came from decades of faithful discipline. 3 times a day, he knelt and prayed. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. It was who he was. His life was built around communion with God. Too often, we wait for emotion to spark our spiritual habits. But Daniel shows us that discipline can become the soil where intimacy grows. If you want to stand strong when the pressure comes, start building that foundation now. Don't wait for a crisis to start praying. Make it your rhythm, your breath, your lifestyle. Third, power shouldn't muzzle your conviction. Daniel was no small-town prophet. He was a political giant, a man with real authority. He worked closely with kings. He held national power. And yet, he never allowed that power to silence his devotion. He didn't compromise to protect his position. He didn't rationalize his way out of obedience. Remember, he was right on the verge of becoming ruler over the whole empire. He could have said, "I can do more for God alive than dead. I'll just wait 30 days. But he didn't. He knew the cost, and he made the choice. And that's why his legacy endures. Finally, live for an audience of one. Daniel's name meant, God is my judge. And he lived like it. He wasn't swayed by culture. He wasn't shaped by fear. He wasn't concerned about popular opinion. His life revolved around what God thought. And because of that, God elevated him again and again. In a world obsessed with likes, followers, applause, and validation, Daniel reminds us of something deeper. It's not who sees you, it's who you serve. Empires crumble, crowns fall, but God remains. And those who live for him will never be forgotten. So, be bold in your faith. Be faithful in your discipline. Be fearless in your prayer. And may your life echo with the same cry as Daniel's. God is my judge. If this story moved you, like, subscribe to Heavenly Tales HQ, and share it with someone who needs it. Tell us in the comments, which Bible story should we bring to life next? Let's keep spreading these powerful Bible stories. Together,